Good evening. It was wonderful to hear Thomas speaking, and so beautiful to hear somebody inspire me to speak before having the opportunity to do so. So, Madam Ambassador, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. In fact, I will speak in English this evening. I hope that's okay. Maybe I should be subtitled in French. That would be quite nice, but I'll go on in English. In fact, I attended the very first Night of Ideas here a few years ago. It was standing room only, and it went on till 5 a.m. So everybody was like, it was incredible. You'd go up into the room up there, like this, to listen to an obscure point of like semantic philosophy. You know, someone debating the real inheritance of Derrida and fighting about this until 5 a.m. So can I just say this event is so wonderfully French. By which I mean it celebrates thought and debate as something everyone should be proud of partaking in. And I love France, and I think we've just heard a wonderful definition about what's worth fighting for in France from Thomas. I, in fact, live there, and I feel now that my life is split between the two cultures. So I'm a little bit of a confused person. Nonetheless, I'm extremely honored to be addressing you this evening, so thank you. It says, addressed by Alexander Zeldin. Taking action. So, this evening, you will hear about many essential questions of geopolitics, science, ethics, AI. I know you have many treats in store for you, many concrete, essential, and apparently tangible subjects. But to begin with, you're stuck with two of us that just work in the theatre. Now, Laurence Olivier said that the theatre is not quite the occupation of an adult. At its most basic, a group of people gather together and watch another group of people act something, and then it's all over. There's no trace of it. Even when it's recorded, it's not the same. There is something missing, and what's missing is the theatre of it. It isn't there. So where is it? Where is the theatre? One useful way of thinking of this real question, which is what is theatre, is that theatre is an act that brings together contradictions, conflicting points of view, disparate fragments, and for a short time makes them whole in a community. You, the audience. But this can't last, as we've just been hearing. And like every community, it dissipates, drifting back into the night. Indeed, theatre seems to take place only in the moment it is happening, and very little is left of it afterwards. So what we make of this moment, of this traffic, this 2 hours traffic of our stage, or 18, is the problem of the theatre, what we do with it, how it continues to travel in us. And indeed, theatre is, by its nature of being so ephemeral, also an art form that struggles with being remembered. Unlike the cinema, for instance, you might hear people say, "I remember when I saw Peter Brook's Mahabharata in 1985 in Avignon." But no recording can capture the being there. So, despite these caveats, it is the art of the present, and it would seem well placed to address our time. That's no doubt why you've asked the two of us to come and open this evening. So the question I would like to ask next is, what time are we living in? So for my part, I grew up in the United Kingdom, but I attended a European school, where I was in the French section, which was an experiment on the part of my parents, because neither of them spoke French. Now, although my childhood was in the 1990s and the early 2000s, the background music in this European setting was still a discomfort about the Second World War. I will never forget the tears of a German teacher, then in his late middle age, as he tried to describe why stupid children's jokes about the Nazis were tragically bad taste. The fall of the Berlin Wall had happened some years previously, and democracy seemed to have won the day. Institutions like Europe felt impregnable. The idea of Europe was still clear and resonant. Now, of course, the certainty with which we, or many of us, hung on to ideas such as progress, democracy, the idea that history has lessons to teach us, are stunned, caught in the headlights, repeating to one another, "You'd never believe this could happen, could you? You'd never think that would happen, do you?" But we should pause now and remember that for many people, this is not the view that they have. They are glad that great institutions are weakened and certainties that did them apparently no favors are upended. Now, I am not a political scientist, an academic, or a historian, but rather I'm a dramatist. So I can only approach this modern malaise through what I observe, and what thinking about the world through theatre has made me think, or made me notice. So my vision is that as much as divided, the world can feel like a lonely place to me at the moment. A place where loneliness is perhaps taking on new, aggressive forms. A place full of longing, of unfulfilled desires, sequestered rage and misunderstandings. Maybe one of the true shackles of our time is the feeling of not being understood, of having more tools, it seems, than ever before to express ourselves, and yet feeling unseen and unheard. In her diary of 1929, the British novelist Virginia Woolf wrote, "If I could catch the feeling, I would. The feeling of the singing of the real world as one is driven by loneliness and silence from the habitable world. Driven from the habitable world." Since our earliest gatherings as a people, the need for theatre to capture a feeling has been there in one form or another, for calling up to the gods, for bringing rain, and so on. Now, it might have begun like this. A group of hunters sit around a fire around 12,000 years ago. Picture it, please. Let's call them Bob, Marie-Claude, and Jeff. So Bob has been out hunting. Jeff came along, but didn't do much. He was tired. Marie-Claude didn't go. So Bob says to Marie-Claude, "It's funny, there was this big bear in the forest today, and it looked really weird and depressed." "Oh yeah?" says Marie-Claude. "Like, what weird?" At this moment, Jeff stands up, and his shadow casts on the wall of the cave. A little bit like mine. "Don't move, Jeff." Jeff doesn't move. "Bend a bit lower." And so he does. And then Jeff's shadow suddenly seems like the bear in the forest. So maybe this was when theatre began. Bob was the first theatre maker, carving out of shadows, a shared understanding that allowed his audience, Marie-Claude, to see something they hadn't. Now indeed, as Thomas just mentioned, talking of Greek theatre, the origin of the word theatre is theatron, from ancient Greek, which means place for seeing, or seeing place. For me, this place for seeing is not contained within a building, an institution. Theatre does not happen because it is in a theatre. For me, theatre is a way of being in the world. By, as Shakespeare says, seeing the whole world as a stage, we can see it anew, the seeing place. Many artists begin their lives in art because of a very familiar feeling, no doubt to many of us here this evening, put so wonderfully by Virginia Woolf, that there is a disconnect between how they felt they are meant to be in the world and how they are in themselves. I think that what she is really talking about is shame. Shame is one of the most powerful mechanisms in social life. It regulates us, it controls us, it's a socially controlling force, and often we live in fear of being covered in it. And I believe, passionately, that one of the main functions of the theatre, and indeed art, is to work against shame. To make the unsayable sayable. In that, there is an act of kindness, I would even say a moral act. And of course, this is also the root of a more political feeling, that the world is unjust and that we must say so. The theatre, by allowing us the gift of character, of a simulacrum of make-believe, gives us the unique conditions to say the unsayable, but to say it with nuance, with sincerity. Inside this conviction that the outer, agreed-upon experience of the world of convention, obedience, and politeness, hides another experience, the more truthful one, the singing world of Woolf, is a profound concern with justice. Justice that is on the side of human dignity. Justice is concerned with understanding. If only we could see it. But for that, we have the seeing place. Now, when I first moved to London as a young man, and I was trying to make it and wasn't making it, I would wander around the town a lot. I would sit at a bus stop and try and envisage what it would be like if we were on a stage, but the walls of the theatre were blown up. and the street would flood in, that there'd be no boundary between audience, stage, and life outside. In the first plays I made with my friends, we always tried to have a back door in the theatre that would go out onto the street to create this feeling. And we also left the lights on, bathing the audience and the actors in the same shared light, where we can all be seen, unlike here. For Love, my play which was mentioned just now, my play set in a homeless shelter at Christmas, or Faith, Hope and Charity, set in a soon-to-be-closed community centre where the rain is pouring in through the broken roof, we all sat in places that hadn't been seen in the theatre, certainly not in the National Theatre, but were just around the corner from most theatres and most buildings. The fabric of austerity Britain, which we could say is perhaps the biggest political idea of the last 15 years, apart from Brexit, where 1 in 5 children grew up in poverty. Now, the project was very simple. It was to bring this feeling of injustice at the world, at the way we live with one another, to a new light. It was not overtly political or journalistic. Such a form of discourse, I'm sure my colleague will agree, does not suit the theatre. But rather, it was an opportunity to behold lives in their efforts to find understanding, to seek happiness, connection, and to do so in a shared light. For the great dramatist Arthur Miller, when we behold a tragic figure in the theatre, we are beholding a person who has, I quote, become known to themselves fully. That is to say, who has faced up to the hidden parts of themselves and seen them and often paid a tragic consequence. But to watch this, like Marie-Claude watching Bob and the Bear, is to recognize to be in the seeing place where we can see that we too are Phèdre in whatever small way. We are curious about another person. In the seeing place, our society is not crippled by misunderstanding, or rather, those misunderstandings, violences, are brought out into the open, washed by the glare of the audience. For a short moment, a community is formed where something is offered to us that we can take away. But it's ephemeral. As I said earlier, theatre disappears. It only exists while it's happening. So what explains, I ask by way of conclusion, that it has survived so long and it should continue to survive? Well, when you see something true in the theatre, it travels in you. Theatre has survived for millennia because people make the effort to remember how it felt to see that Hamlet, that new play in a garage. We make the effort to remember and to come face to face once again with the infinite, miraculous nature of life, and to remember that we are not alone. To remember to come back to a character, to come back to an understanding. In remembrance, there is already an act, an effort, and we can be inspired, maybe, to act. Thank you, and long live theatre.